Hi everyone, welcome to our Pilot and Feasibility Studies mini webinar series. My name is Katie Meller and today I'm talking to Associate Professor Sally Hopewell from the Oxford Clinical Trials Research Unit to find out what progression criteria are for external pilot and feasibility studies. Hi Sally.
Hi, thanks Katie, nice to meet you.
So my first question is, what are progression criteria?
Yeah, so progression criteria, when we're thinking about progression criteria, what we're talking about are pre-specified criteria that can help researchers to interpret the findings of external pilots to decide whether or not the future definitive trial is feasible or not. And if it is, whether any changes need to be made to the trial design. And it's really important that these progression criteria are pre-specified before the start of the trial, because what we want to do is to avoid any bias associated with establishing progression criteria, for example, if we knew the pilot trial's findings.
Thanks, Sally. So what does the CONSORT extension for randomized pilot trials say about progression criteria?
Yeah, so the CONSORT extension says it's quite clear in terms of its guidance that we need to, as researchers, we need to report how the decision to progress to the main definitive trial is made, if that is the case.
Okay. And so in your experience, what are the most common types of progression criteria that are used?
Yeah, so people use a number of different progression criteria. Perhaps the most common things we see are around the recruitment of participants into the trial or the retention, so how many patients we remain in the study and we can follow up. But it could relate to a number of different things. So it might relate to trial processes, it might relate to the resources in the trial, it might relate to trial management process or the scientific conduct of the study. So a common example might be things to do with the design and the deliverability of the trial interventions that we want to pilot first before conducting a future definitive trial.
I see. Thank you. And so my final question is, how do you measure progression criteria?
So people have measured progression criteria in a number of different ways, but I think increasingly what we're seeing is use of the traffic light system that's been used for a while in internal pilots, but we're now seeing it more in external pilots, whereby we set a threshold in terms of progression. So we've got a green threshold for where the future definitive trial is feasible, red for when it's not, and then an amber threshold whereby it would be feasible, but we need to make some changes before we could proceed to the future definitive trial.
I see. Thanks, Sally. Thanks so much for sharing that information with us. It was really great to speak to you today. And thank everyone for listening. Please keep an eye on our website for future mini webinars in the series and other upcoming talks and events. Thank you.
Thanks.